Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Cash Talk. And today I'm joined by a very special guest, Olympic superstar and now CEO of Generation Life, Grant Hackett. Grant's accolades in the pool are astonishing. 7-time Olympic medalist, 8-time Commonwealth Games medalist, and former world record holder. In his prime, Grant was the fastest long-distance swimmer in the world and the shining star of Australian swimming. Outside of the pool, Grant has established himself as a leader in the finance industry and is now the current CEO of Gen Life. With over 16 years' experience, Grant has held many senior positions across marketing, distribution, wealth management for Westpac and BT. Grant's qualifications includes an executive MBA with first-class honours, a diploma in business law, a diploma in financial services. For those who are not familiar with what Generation Life is, it's the pioneer of Australia's first truly flexible investment bond. They have been the forefront of providing innovative investment solutions for over 17 years. Today, they are the leading provider in tax-effective investment solutions and have over $2 billion invested today. Everyone, Grant Hackett.
G'day, John. Thanks for having me on the show.
No, that's all right, mate. That's all right. Thanks for jumping on. So today, obviously, a lot of people know you inside the pool, actually. And obviously, including myself, was very fortunate to see the accomplishments in the pool. But, for me, who's in the industry, I know about Grant outside of the pool and, I'm trying to, really kind of making waves outside of the pool and in regards to the financial services industry. And for the listeners and the viewers, we're really kind of going to be going through a very unique skill set that Grant's got, actually, is having the combination of the two together. So really we want to be going at how they relate to one another and then really get into investment bonds and how they play an important role in what I do for my clients and what Australians can do with their wealth. So, Grant, the swimming stuff goes without saying, and most people know about your story here, but, looking at financial services, how did you get into the financial industry and what do you enjoy about it the most?
It's funny, ever since, I was probably, super young, I was always interested in finance, entrepreneurial type things, like anything sort of commercial, anything transactional, I always really enjoyed. So I wanted to get into business, even through my swimming career, my teenage years, I was always asking, people that I knew that were in business or ran different businesses, how do they go about it? And what is it sort of, I guess, all the different parameters that have to come into it to be successful. And I really wanted to understand those key drivers of success. And really, I just seemed to gravitate more and more towards finance. And it was back in 2003, I sat down with a couple of very, very senior figures within the financial services industry, which I had the opportunity, because of my swimming career, which I'm just so grateful that I had, and basically said, these are the areas that I'm interested in. One was in investment banking, one was the retail and commercial banking side and investment management as well. And kind of, I just started getting some really good guidance from there midway through my career. And my dad always said to me, you have to retire to something, not from something, as an athlete. So I was really, really conscious of having a career and a deep sense of purpose outside of the pool. So for me, as much as everybody got to see, I guess, the swimming career and the accolades and the success that came with that, I was a whole other person, I guess, outside of the pool that people don't get to see day to day, that doesn't get the publicity or people don't get the insights around, but that I'm truly passionate about. So as soon as I finished swimming, I literally went straight into banking and finance, and then obviously now more on the investment side. But yeah, it's been something that I've been interested in from a very, very young age. And to be honest, I remember being in the middle of my swimming career and doing a university degree and being the only one sitting on a plane kind of reading through textbooks, because I really had a strong interest outside of the pool that I wanted to pursue post my career. Because let's be honest, this career that I've got right now is already longer than my international swimming career, and I'm only 41. So, you've got to make sure that there's other things in life as an athlete, regardless of what sort of financial success you might even have within that, the purpose and the sense of winning. I know for my type of personality, I love to have a challenge, I love to have a goal, and I love to try and be successful against that goal. So for me, that element is more important than anything else. Otherwise, I find it almost destabilizing in a sense that if I don't have that strong sense of purpose, I'm like, what am I doing? Who am I? What am I up to? So I'm sort of one of those people you'll see at 80, probably still sitting beside a laptop, or in front of a laptop, trying to, achieve the sort of next step relative to that phase of life.
And I'll probably be with you, mate. So we'll probably be just looking at what's the next phase in the financial world. But that's a great one. I really liked how your dad actually said around, that you've really got to look forward and you've really got to retire to something. I think a lot of athletes and a lot of professionals who do have those kind of short careers, you should be listening to that and really hearing about that, because I think that is one great piece of advice. I think the other one as well too is that, you found something that you were really passionate about. I know in my own story and the people that know my story, I started when I was in the industry when I was 14. So I was very blessed to find that from a very young age. And I think it's, allowed me to just keep pushing forward and going at a much harder pace, because I just love it and I'm really passionate about it. And I see that coming through with you. But the other one as well too is around setting those goals. And you talked about, your nature in regards to setting the goals and achieving them. And I think, talking about the swimming career, I kind of say that has to go without doubt. My old man was a professional boxer back in the day, Grant, and, it was very much about, having a goal, and really trying to kind of smash it out the park, which obviously has a major bearing on the advice that I give my clients today. So, why do you think that goal setting is so important, and how can you maybe relate in swimming? And now, obviously, even as the CEO of Generation Life and really at the forefront of, investment bond innovation, how do you see this all relating?
Oh, the fundamental principles of any sort of success are exactly the same. It doesn't matter what field or what industry you're in, that the behaviors are there to be successful. You're just applying it to a different set of tasks and obviously a different field. So just to give you reference back in my swimming career, how I went about that, no one really told me about goal setting when I was super young. It was just, it was more intuitive. And really my big goals came about when I was 13. So when I was 13, it was 1993 and Sydney got the Olympic Games. And I thought, wow, go to an Olympic Games, but to go to one in your own backyard would be a once in a lifetime opportunity. So I looked at who was the best in my event, which was the 1500 meter freestyle, and Kieran Perkins, which is an Australian icon. And I just researched. I didn't have Google. We didn't have internet and all those sort of things back then. So I literally went through a bunch of swimming magazines to find this guy's best times as, 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 15, 16, 17, then you're in the open category across all the main events, the 200, 400, 800, 1500 meter freestyle. And I just wrote those times down and put them up as my goals to either emulate those times or beat those times. Because I thought, well, he's the Olympic champion. He's the world record holder and world champion. How do I actually get there? Well, I just have to take those progressions that he took along those formative years and getting into an international career. So it was really, really simple and it was digestible. And I think that's when it comes to goal setting. People put these massive goals up and it's very hard almost as an Olympian, because Olympics are every 4 years. The scarcity is what makes it so special. But 4 years out, that's too far to feel motivated and engaged with a goal to probably the extent you need to be in order to achieve it, particularly when it's a massive goal. I mean, if you want to be a millionaire and you've got $10 in the bank account, that doesn't feel like you're ever going to get there. So you think, yeah, I'll just go out and waste that money, not think about it, not really plan around it too much. But if you go, well, my goal is to get to $1,000, and you get to $1,000, it feels good. And then there's a sense of achievement. And then you go, okay, if I got to $1,000, maybe I can get to $10,000. And then all of a sudden you do that. And you start just making these progressions along the way and you feel successful. Even though you're not at your big goal yet, you've made all these digestible, realistic goals and you felt good about what you're doing. And that creates the momentum and the confidence more than anything to feel like you can actually get to the next goal. Then all of a sudden you are at $1 million and you think, okay, what's the next big peak that I want to climb? So that goal setting, the really important elements to it are simplicity, clarity, and digestible goals with a big one in mind. And for me, that sort of came fairly natural as an athlete, but then I had to work out, well, how do I do that in business? And then you become a head of or a general manager or in the position of CEO now. How do I actually create and structure that environment for everyone else? Well, again, it comes back to the principles of absolute simplicity, 2 or 3 metrics. Let's not try and have 20 metrics so we confuse ourselves and trip over ourselves trying to achieve them and become disengaged along the way. And then what's the reward at the end of that? So it's like a really simple reward system in place, a couple of really simple metrics. And those 2 or 3 metrics, trust me, they'll drive everything else within the business that you're trying to achieve as well. And I find that environment's been super effective, both from a sporting point of view, but also a corporate point of view as well.
It's a skill that is interchangeable, like you said, across all different jobs, occupations, whatever you're aiming for. Many people have heard about the SMART system, being able to create smart goals, which creates a simple system to stick to. And, we've really tried to make it what we call smarter goals. And Grant, you talked about reward as well too, and really having, a smart system of being able to evaluate them regularly and then rewarding yourself. And we start working with our clients on actually 90-day game plans as well too, Grant, because we realize when, as a financial advisor, making these big goals that are potentially retirement or 30 years away, they just don't touch it and feel it. So if we can create these incremental steps to get there, they just are more ingrained in the system, and they start believing that they're getting somewhere, not this goal that's so far away that they just can't even touch. So
exactly. And that's the thing. It's like, standing at the bottom of a mountain and just going, how am I going to get up to the top of that? But if someone says, just climb the first 15 meters, and you get up there, you go, oh, this feels pretty good. And I achieved that. And as humans, everything's emotion, right? Like logically, I know I can get to that goal. I know if I do it like this, I could get there. But if you say to someone, get up there and we'll recognize it, here's a bit of, like if it's a financial goal, you can go out there and buy that thing if you get there a little bit early. Like we're incentive-based animals. And then when we get there, we like to feel good about it. And then we naturally have this sense of confidence and self-belief that we can do it. And we almost need to feel those things, not logically, or intellectualize them, but feel those. And then it enables us to sort of get on that journey. And I didn't realize how important that was in my swimming career, but it's like, every time you do a personal best time, it's the best feeling in the world. Yeah, I mean, I started 5 laps away from Kieran Perkins, to give a bit of perspective, on a 30-lap race. That's how far, when I put these goals in place, I was off. So it was, when you're talking about a sport that I've got 3 Olympic silver medals over a distance of 2,400 meters with a total margin of 0.8 of a second. 5 laps is a long way for one race. So for me, though, every time I did a PB or I progressed or I beat one of his times in the age group, like as a 15-year-old, that sense of achievement was huge. And it gave me the confidence to go back next season and be able to do it again. And there is nothing different about that, whether it's sport, business, politics, or, running your own small business, that if you're able to get those smaller goals, it creates that sense of belief and momentum. And it also does to the people around you as well. And if you're able to celebrate and recognize those, but then also create an environment where people understand what success and failure actually look like too. So you've got to have a really clear definition of that. There's one thing trying to get a goal, but you also have to have consequences for failure as well. And that's an important part of goal setting. In sports, super easy, because if you lose, it's just, you naturally feel, pretty crappy about it. But but in the corporate world, sometimes there's nuances that don't necessarily, you don't suffer consequences. So you've got to feel the hurt, because sometimes hurt is a good motivator to pursue the goal as well.
As you know, the more you fail, the closer you are to your next success, and being able to appreciate those failures, learn from them, and then take it to the next gear. I'm sure across your whole life has been the same. I know it's definitely been for me. It's when usually you hit that big failure that your success is around the corner.
It's really true. Sorry, just to John to harp on
go.
that point. It's like most of the time, after your biggest failures, you have your biggest successes, of course, and vice versa. Complacency can set in after success, and then often you have your biggest failures. So, people often look at, even, business career or sporting career, and they sort of see where you're at or what you've achieved. But I've definitely failed more than I've succeeded on that journey, like unequivocally. Like the amount of times where I've gotten second or not met a time or not conquered something just in my training and my preparation has happened a lot more often than not, but I've used that to be able to then get myself back to the stage of the goal that I want to. And it's the same within business too. I mean, you have great days, bad days, but you've got to use the bad days just as much as you feel the recognition of the good days.
When it comes to wealth creation, most people at their first failure, unfortunately, jump off the ship. Okay. And it's the ones that stick to it, and keep on with the strategy and kind of keep on improving that will end up getting where they need to get to. And we know that. Okay. And that goes across anything. I think the biggest one as well too, and I don't know if this fell into the stars aligned for you, but we use investment bonds very much for our goal-based advice. Okay. And very much we'll go through obviously what investment bonds are, because some people don't even know what they are. But it's very interesting that we're talking about goals, because when we set up investment bonds for clients, there's usually a specific goal in place. And simply by having that account, it doesn't need to be an investment bond. it just shows them that reward and that they're getting closer and closer. So I don't know if the stars aligned, but I don't know if you've taken a notice of that yourself. But for me, that was a big one. Having you on the show was around, obviously, I know that you've got this big kind of goal-orientated success thing. And then even with Generation Life, there must be a linking between that as well.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the reason that I actually got into the space of investment bonds, because an investment bond, just to touch on that very quickly, is an after-tax paying structure like superannuation. That's the easiest comparison. And as much as it hasn't been mainstream like a superannuation, it's becoming a lot more mainstream because of the changes to superannuation back in 2017, where they put a lot of caps on, the total contribution cap and then the concessional caps as well. And, investment bonds have been around much, much longer than superannuation, but the changes to super just made that too attractive as the after-tax paying structure. The innovations and everything else within this space kind of fell off a cliff at that particular point in time. Changes back to super have now put innovations back in this space. And so the best way to think of an investment bond as, someone coming in wanting to invest is that you have different structures that you can invest within to grow your overall investment. So you can use yourself, your personal name, you can use a company, you can use a trust structure, you can use your superannuation, and you can use an investment bond. That's all it is. It's a purely a legal structure that you can invest within. The biggest, nuance with this in comparison to a lot of those other structures is it's very similar to super because of the after-tax paying. So we do all the tax payments for you at an individual level. The tax rate is a maximum tax rate of 30% versus 15% in super, so that's the big difference. But our effective tax rates usually sit below 20% for a lot of our high-growth funds because of all your add-backs and the way we manage the money. So it's a very tax-effective way to do your investing, and you can access any asset class in there. And the reason I got into it is because I saw these changes in superannuation. My chairman, who's been very, very successful for probably close to 40 years in financial services, is, the CEO of some of the largest wealth groups throughout the country over the course of his career, chaired the likes of MLC, executive chairman at Colonial First State. So he's run a lot of big groups. He saw this years before that because he said, look, there's just so much money going into superannuation. I believe that at some point in time, they'll start to put the brakes on that and they'll start to look at structures like this again. And I totally agree with him. This is 2014. Changes came 3 years later. So he really has a crystal ball somewhere sitting up there. And he came in there and he personally took a massive stake within this business. He asked me to come in because I used to run growth assets for him when he was the CEO of Bankers Trust at BT, which is owned by Westpac. And we just went in and just innovated, created an A+ team, and really started to invest a lot of time and effort into this space. And look, it's been a real success story since that time. And I think for me, what really attracted me to it was just opportunity. Here's a big change within the industry, and here's an opportunity to put your fingerprints on something that could have a significant amount of growth. Got to be a lot of hard work. There's a whole sort of education process with the structure that's sort of laid, I wouldn't call it completely dormant, but hasn't been as mainstream as it was, say, 20 or 30 years prior to that we've got to, really step up to that challenge if we want to meet that success. And so far, it's certainly been that story.
And we've felt exactly the same. Like, obviously, superannuation for most people is the best tax-effective structure to be in. But now, especially with a lot of the younger generation starting their wealth creation journey very, very young, which is amazing to see. The other thing that we is as well is in regards to accessibility. And this has kind of been a big one. So for people that aren't aware, an investment bond be a structure, you can actually access the money whenever you want. But there are good tax provisions or tax considerations that if you hold the bond for longer than 10 years. Okay, so similar to like superannuation, when you meet like preservation age or particular, the investment bond has this kind of golden period, which is 10 years. Okay.
Yep.
But it's very good when we go to then aligning goals, because a lot of these goals usually are like, especially for say like the millennial group is like, John, we don't want to retire when we're 60. We want the choice to retire when we're 50. Exactly. Okay, cool. And that might be 15 years away for these guys.
And even if I don't want to retire, I still want to feel like I've got the choice.
Bingo. It's all about bingo about the choice. And then, most of them are probably like us, Grant, that may be 80 years old, still working in some capacity, but just have the choice to do so. Yeah. And really being able to align it to those kind of goals is in regards to having the funding. So we use it in regards to like the the early retirement funding, okay, which is this big kind of FIRE movement that we're seeing at the moment. And the other one as well too is in regards to specific goals for specific children, for example, or for specific outcomes. Like, for example, by the time my kid is 18 years of age, I want them to have this bucket of money. Whereas probably back in the day, they've put it into, I don't know, a ComSec account, or they've put it into a share scenario, and it's not really been gold aligned. It might not have been as tax effective, or they just simply didn't know about it. So there's in some cases we've got like multiple different investment bonds, for different goals. And for us, they play a really, really strong role, or important role, both for tax effectiveness, structuring, but ultimately for the achievement of our clients' goals. And I'm sure you see that, and I'm sure that's very much obviously what I see Generation Life really pushing to the market on.
Yeah, definitely. Everything that you've stated there is spot on. I mean, from a goals point of view, it's fantastic, because the longer you hold the asset, the better the tax incentives are over time. So you kind of, even if you take it out in 4 years, you've been able to create a decent tax arbitrage because you've had the benefit of deferral over that time period. But if you hit the 10-year mark, there's no personal tax liability to pay whatsoever. Even if there's $100 million sitting in there, you take out $100 million, you have $100 million to spend, not a big tax bill afterwards. So, that's the big thing about it. It's one of those things that keeps incentivizing you to do more. And it was quite interesting. We wondered, when there was that sharp market contraction because of COVID back in March 2020, whether there would be a lot of redemptions, given markets were falling quite rapidly. And it was funny, our redemptions went down. So we found that people, they're so connected to this goal-based emotionally, that they're like, no, I've got not only if it's a long-term investment for me, but it's also attached to another goal, in terms of creating that tax arbitrage in there. And if I've held this for 5 years, I don't want to take it out now, because I've only got 5 years until I get these, tax concessions, significant tax concessions as part of my investment. So that was really interesting to see that behavior from the thousands and thousands of investors that we have. Also, the other aspect to it, you're right, around, the comparison to superannuation that we receive so often, is the liquidity. I mean, if you set up one of these today, but something happens that you don't foresee and you need access to those funds, you can access them next week, just like you could any other liquid investment. So, you've kind of got the best of both worlds. You've got this kind of long-term savings vehicle that creates more incentives for you along the way to be able to do it. But at the same time, you can access those funds at any time if you need to. So, and your point before around people that want to have the optionality of retiring early, it is a great vehicle for transition to retirement. So we see a lot of young people that, of course, they're not going to be capped out at the 1.7 in superannuation. They might have $100,000 or $200,000 sitting in there. But at the same time, they want to go, okay, I might maximize my super contributions or put a certain amount in, but at the same time, I still want to have a vehicle outside of that I can tap into that still is tax effective, unlike, if I'm on a high marginal tax rate. So therefore, they set up an investment bond, and often enough, they'll put a savings plan attached to it every single month where part of their income goes in there. And then they'll get this nice little nest egg where they think, well, I don't necessarily want to stop working, but I'd love to be able to dial down to 3 days a week. And they can do that, and they can supplement their income tax effectively with the investment bond for that 5 or 10 year period until they, hit preservation age, and then they can access their super as well. So it's the flexibility of the structure that is super attractive, along with all the other, tax incentives that you receive around it as well. And then for us, we're investment agnostic. We've got 61 options that sit on our investment menu. So you choose whatever you like, you build your own portfolio. We're not sitting here as an investment firm telling you what to invest in. If you want to go in Australian equities or global equities or fixed interest or cash or whatever, your underlying investment ethos is, you can do that. So for us, we kind of create, I guess, the structure, the tax benefits around it. Also, another benefit that's huge when it comes to investment bonds is estate planning, because it gives you 100% reassurance because of binding nominations. And then the last aspect of it that people absolutely love is from a risk management point of view, because depending on the way you set up the investment bond, is it's creditor protected. Section 116 2D of the Bankruptcy Act, which I know well now, is that investment bonds are creditor protected. So if you want to be able to carve out some money, and particularly if you want to keep it in your personal name, you can do that through an investment bond and know that you've got protection, you've got tax arbitrage, and then you've got estate planning benefits. So you can use it for one or many things or many features of the particular bond to achieve your goals.
It ticks a lot of boxes. And listen, I must stress before we continue anymore, like, guys, this is general advice. This is not personal advice. Please do not go and act on this. As much as they are great, you do need to seek personal, professional advice in regards to your particular situation, because for some people, it is not the right vehicle for. Even though there is a lot of flaws for it, there is sometimes it's not appropriate for you. So you should seek personal advice.
Definitely. If you're on a low tax rate, this is not probably going to be the best investment vehicle for you. So I think, we're such believers at Generation Life of financial advice, because the financial landscape is so complex. What structure do I use? What incentives do I get from the government? What's changing as part of the federal budget every single year that I can access now, particularly if I'm going into retirement, the complexity and, challenges that you have around that. So you actually need someone just to help you optimize, not necessarily just your investment returns, but we're talking about the structural elements to it. And this is where I always say to people, make sure you get financial advice around this, because you don't want to set up something that in 5 years' time where you go, oh my God, if I had someone who gave me a little bit of foresight around the way I should do this, I wouldn't find myself in this situation now. So while you don't feel like you're making a mistake at the time, you can pay for it down the line. So we're big believers in that. And we certainly, at Generation Life, we've got a technical team where we work with financial advisors and we say, give us the scenario, because we want to make sure that scenario works for that particular client. And if it doesn't, don't do it. Go to another investment product, because as soon as you start saying yes or manipulating ways for people to invest with you, and that gets exposed, you lose your credibility as a firm. So we're very set on that, and we work very, very closely with financial advisors and their teams on that as well.
It's very important for people to know that, and so you can see how closely the relationship is like from provider to advisor. But I think the other one as well too is that we're all got this common goal in place, which we want obviously the best outcome. And the best outcome is to have the highest probability of clients achieving their goals and aspirations. And this is where this whole kind of, synergy between goals and goal setting and everything kind of comes in. There's all of these common goals. And it was very interesting. You said something about the contraction that happened in the market in March 2020. And I think there's an element there, Grant, around reward and consequence. And it's like the reward is the tax-free element after 10 years. Yeah. If I pull out now, it's like, oh, I'm going to feel that pain. Yeah, I'm going to have to pay that tax obligation or whatever it is. So, it would be very interesting, and it's probably around the behaviors, which I for people that are listening or viewing, one of my biggest strong points that I believe is around behavioral coaching and around behavioral finance and the way that we can do that. And we very much saw that as well too, Grant, that if people had the right behaviors, they were just like, oh, I'm not going to touch that fire because I'm going to get burnt.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's even if you'd held the product for a while, like, people don't understand. There's a lot of tax concessions and incentives to hold it. Even inside 10 years, even if you think I'm not going to get to 10 years, because if you're paying a higher tax rate in one entity, and some of our funds pay tax of 10 to 15% or even lower of a couple of them. I try not to oversell those ones for obvious reasons. But, if you're on a tax rate that's above 30% and you're achieving that, but you still decide to take it out in year 5, you've got the compounding effect of being able to reinvest a much larger amount of money over that period before you took it out. But what we found with, investors through that particular point in time when markets were contracting sharply, it's like, well, no, I've already put 5 years into this investment. So if I take it out and then things aren't as bad as what, they perhaps, we think, because we always go over the top as humans, right? We think to extremes. But if things don't play out as bad as what, we seem to survive each time and markets seem to bounce back, then why would I take that out and then start my 10 years again? Because if you take it outside of the structure, then you've got to start again. So I think people feel like, I've put effort into those 5 years. I've only got 5 years to go.
I've nearly made it to the Olympics. I've nearly made it to the Olympics.
Why stop now? Just because I got an injury. Why stop now? So, and people were rewarded very well for that, because markets bounce back, and depending on the tenure of your investment, you would have done exceptionally well through that period.
I think the biggest other one as well too, when we're talking around investment bonds, is just how many people are unaware of it. Obviously, people in the industry are very aware of it. They've been around for a long, long time, and they have come back into favour, since the changes to superannuation and whatnot. But what do you reckon that is? What do you reckon? Is it just superannuation was so much in the public view? There was a lot of marketing around it. There was a lot of dollars around it. Like, why is it that people don't know about investment bonds, you reckon?
I think when you talk about structures, like, things are either voluntary or mandatory in life. Superannuation is a mandatory one. Your employer's got to pay that as part of your SGs. And so people know about it, they understand it because they have to. And I think that's what makes it, really mainstream and keeps people up to date, because there's always going to be commentary around that, particularly if there are changes, because those changes are going to pretty much affect everybody. Unlike an investment bond where it's only going to affect a certain portion of the population. Also, the other structures that people utilize to invest have been around for a very long time and are just common, like a company structure or a trust structure. So they've always utilized those. Accountants understand and execute on those particular structures if people, hit a certain amount of wealth. So I think, it's just been stuff that's been ingrained in behaviors of, your sort of trusted advisors, where investment bonds has been one more to the side, like where people have gone, okay, I'll use it for this specific purpose or this specific purpose. And so I think, there's been a lack of knowledge or education out there. And like I said, a super was just so attractive for so long. And a lot of people who had wealth were pretty close to preservation age. So why wouldn't you put it in that 15% environment versus the 30% environment? And particularly when it was uncapped as well, where now the kind of music has stopped on that. So it's forced people to look outside of super. And I think, whilst investment bonds aren't really appreciated to the extent maybe they should be, they are starting to get there, and it's going to take time. But it's not mandatory to put money in there. It's for people who want to educate themselves, understand what the optimal structure should be for them. And we never sell it as a silver bullet. We always say it forms part of your overall structure. So, you've obviously got perhaps your principal place of residence in your own name. You've got some, an investment property over here. You've got your superannuation over here. Your investment bond is for this purpose. And it can be something as, big as estate planning, where it's really going to help you equalize your estate or guarantee that money's going to go to the beneficiary that you want it to, and it's not going to be contested. Or on the other side of that, it can be for a big tax arbitrage, because you're on a high marginal tax rate, you've got plenty of wealth, and you want to make sure that you're reducing your tax liability year in, year out. So it just depends on what that purpose is. And look, to give you a bit of perspective, what has happened since those changes to super on the 1st of July in 2017 has taken place. The business had been around for well over a decade before that, and it was averaging probably around 120 to 130 million dollars worth of inflows per annum. We did that in, say, probably the last quarter. We probably reached that within 7 weeks. So you can see how much it's sort of grown in what is a relatively short time frame since those changes to super, and we've brought a lot of innovations at Generation Life to the market as well.
And I think the other one to add on to all of that, and ditto to everything that Grant has said, I think the other one as well too, and for people that are really novice and have a no clue that what an even investment bond, there's also bonds which are like fixed income bonds. Please, They are not the same thing, okay? And it is, and I'm not, being straight up on this. I think it's just one of those kind of terminologies that has kind of adapted over time, And just please remember that fixed income bonds are actually an underlying investment asset, okay? We are talking about an investment bond as a structure. Obviously, you've heard this over the conversation, but I think that hasn't helped as well too.
No, you're spot on there, John. It's really, really funny because, I've been obviously doing this for a very long time, so you kind of forget that. But bond is just a finance term. It's not actually something specific. It's a finance term between an obligation between two parties. So, you're right. One is purely a structure to invest in. Think of a company, think of super, think of an investment bond. That is the way that works. And then, on the other side, there is bonds, which are fixed interest products, of course. So, which is an asset class within itself. So, asset class over here, investment structure over here.
Because the first time, I'll present it to someone who's just starting out in their wealth creation journey, they'll be like, oh, don't I have that in my asset allocation? And I'm just like, and I really need to go through it all. And, obviously after a while, they understand the differences, but I think that hasn't helped in regards to the unawareness of it, because it's just that, that naming stuff. But Grant, thanks for jumping on. It's been really, really great understanding, obviously, that, how you think about goal setting and how that flows on into both of you, your career in and outside the pool. And obviously, we share that passion around investment bonds and obviously, really helping people achieve their goals and aspirations. But on a lighter note, mate, it's probably a bit of curiosity for me. Do you still jump in the pool? Do you still get in there?
I jump in there, but not to swim the laps that I used to. to give a little bit of perspective on the training schedule that I had to undertake to go into Olympic Games, I'd be doing 15, 16 kilometers a day, 6 days a week.
Wow.
And, those sessions aren't just about rocking up and doing that many kilometers. It's about doing it better than the guy on the other side of the world, who might be over in the UK or US or China, wherever your main competitors are coming from. So for me, I jump in the pool now with the kids. I'll do a few laps with them, have a little bit of fun with them. And that's about it. It's funny. I think I was scared of the bathtub when I really retired after the Beijing Olympics. It was just like I'd spent so much time. I started swimming when I was 4, and I was doing serious kilometers by probably the age of 12 or 13. And I was doing a lot of sports, and that defining moment in 1993 made me drop footy, made me drop surf lifesaving. I was doing the Ironman there and just really focus on the pool. But at the end of the day, I think, for me now, it's just about keeping fit. And I find sports just it's my mental health, right? Like it's the thing that sort of gets that pressure release, gets a little bit of balance back emotionally for me. So that's the purpose of sport now. But yeah, swimming is relegated to a few laps with the kids, and that is it.
Any of the kids got a little bit of a passion for it yet, or are they still a bit young? Or
yeah, probably. I mean, I've got twins from a first marriage and a 2-year-old from a second marriage. So yeah, we've got one in there that really enjoys her swimming. She seems to really gravitate towards it, but she's kind of got that athletic ability where she's good at all sports. She's kind of just jumps in and good coordination and just has that natural ability. But yeah, the 2-year-old seems to really love the pool. It's funny where we live. I live in an apartment building, and we'll walk past where the pool is, and all you hear is pool, pool, pool pointing, and he's always so he seems to enjoy it for now. But it's kind of funny. It's one of those things that now, as a parent, I can reflect on what my parents went through, because I'm like, surely all parents get up at 4:45 with you and take you down to the pool every day before school, and then go to work all day, and then cook for you, take you to swimming carnivals on the weekend, make sure you travel interstate for all the other bigger meets that you have to get into. So I'm not sure I want them to get that good, because I'll have to do all the stuff that my parents did. And now I see how hard it is. So, if they want to do it, support them 100%, but not too concerned if they want to just do sport for general fitness as well.
Yeah, no, that's it. And mate, I think, me as a father, and probably you're the same, I think until you're a parent, you don't really realize how much they love you and how much they did for you. And it's amazing what the parents did. And hopefully we can do even half of what they did for us. So Grant, thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for jumping on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm sure I'll speak to you soon. But for all the listeners, I'm hopefully enjoyed that, and look forward to speaking to you and seeing you on the next episode. Cheers.
Beautiful. Thanks, John. Thanks for having me, mate. Much appreciated.